the scene. He's got the voice that's mean, asking those questions that you never seen. He's got that fire, burning bright and clean. Andrew Keen making waves, break the routine on the Keen on show. He brings the heat, asking the minds, digging deep till they bleed. No sugar-coated truths, no lies to deceive. Andrew Keen, the master of the interview beat. He's got the knowledge, he's got the flair, challenging ideas with a fearless stare. With every question, he's uncovering what's there. Andrew Keen, a truth seeker, he's aware.
Hello, everybody. A couple of years ago, almost exactly, in July of 2022, we did a show with the best-selling suspense writer, Daniel Silva, on how to write a best-selling literary spy novel every year. In 2022, it was Portrait of an Unknown Woman. We missed 2023. We'll probably talk about that. Back in 2023, Daniel wrote The Collector, but now he's back with his new book, Annually, A Death in Cornwall, and he's joining us from the Peninsula Hotel in New York. Daniel, congratulations. You're on schedule, are you?
I'm on schedule. I actually I have to keep to a very strict schedule to do what I do. And because of the Republican convention, excuse me, which begins next week, that's my usual publication week. We pushed me early.
You couldn't have a word with the Republicans and shift it around. Aren't you more important than the Republicans?
You know, it would just create a really crowded media environment, and we just felt it would be better to avoid that week.
How would you feel if Donald Trump was one of your readers? I wonder if he's ever read any of your books.
I'm confident he hasn't. Let's just put it that way. You know, I don't think he's much of a reader of anything, to be honest with you. I know
especially literary.
He reads the newspaper and thinks about himself, but he's not really a big reader. So I'm pretty confident he's probably never heard of me.
So the book, the new book, which is out this week, A Death in Cornwall, features a certain Gabriel Allon. In your X page, you describe yourself as a friend of Gabriel Allon. Tell me about this, Allon.
Our friendship, our long friendship. Well, I can't imagine writing a continuing character that you didn't like and that you didn't like to spend time with. And that's certainly not the case with me. I love all the time I spend with my character. He is endlessly fascinating. He's charming. He's extremely intelligent. He's unbelievably gifted. He has a great sense of humor, and I enjoy every minute that we're together.
Does he have any weaknesses, this Allon fellow?
Yeah, I think that he has an over-exaggerated or very pronounced sense of right and wrong, and he tends to see things in black and white sometimes. And I think I probably suffer from the same fault, but he definitely has a very strong sense of right and wrong, and when he doesn't. He's not easily persuaded to change his mind when he makes up his mind about a situation or a problem in the world, and he defends those who can't defend themselves. He protects the weak, and restoration. He is an art restorer, so restoration is a very important theme to the series, and he does have the ability to fix not only paintings but people and situations, and that's what I admire most about him.
Were you influenced in any way by Ripley in your development of Allon? I recently rewatched An American Friend, which of course is a wonderful film, late Ripley, and I've always been a Ripley lover. Does Allon have any Ripley in him? And do you have any?
One of my earliest members of my publishing team back at when I was still at Putnam, very astute head of our marketing and sales, thought that I had picked up a Ripley influence, and I wish I could say that I was, probably a little bit. She's a much better writer than I am, but he is a bit of a Ripley-esque character. I mean, Tom is obviously a psychopath and a serial killer and a true
and a
criminal.
very lovable fellow at the same time.
And a
Don't-
very
don't
lovable.
bash my friend Tom Ripley.
Gabriel is not a psychopath or a serial killer, although he has killed people in the line of duty. But yeah, sort of the vibe and the flavor. Gabriel is certainly, and something that comes out in this novel, he's very comfortable around criminals, and Tom certainly is as well. Gabriel is a former undercover intelligence operative, and that he's living under an assumed identity. He's carrying false papers. He's carrying a gun. He lived pretty much for much of his life as a criminal. He was violating the laws of the countries where he lived. So he's very comfortable among criminals, and he has a lot of criminals who are good friends and who help him out when he needs it.
So you said that you weren't as good a writer as Highsmith. I'm sure Highsmith said the same thing about Dostoevsky. Is there a theme here of sort of a Dostoevskian theme also in Alon and this dark world of criminality and goodness?
I wish I could say there was, but I'm gonna shy away from that comparison. I wouldn't want to compare myself to Dostoevsky.
Well, you said earlier that your weakness, like Alon, was to seeing the world in black and white when it comes to morality. You've been quite explicit recently, controversially, I'm sure, Daniel, in supporting Israel. Does Alon, I mean, in terms of seeing the world in this black and white, moral good and bad, evil, how is he able to do that if he spends his life associated with criminals?
Because he uses them, especially in this novel, to good ends, and he uses them for a purpose. As for my, having that on my social media feed, I can't remember what the date of that was, but I don't have a black and white view of that conflict, and I think I have a very nuanced and sophisticated view of what is going on in the region and in that war. I am heartsick about the loss of so many innocent Palestinian lives, and I wish this conflict could be brought to an end as quickly as possible. I have stated over and over again, and I have put it in print in Gabriel's mouth, that despite all of the headwinds, I remain committed to a just and lasting two-state solution in the Middle East. I mean, anyone who's read any of my books where we've dealt with the Palestinian issue can see that I write about the issue with great sensitivity and sympathy. I'm not an Israeli citizen, obviously. If I were, I would be on what was once the old secular center left, which is where Gabriel would be, an Ashkenazi center left that really doesn't exist anymore in Israel. One of my friends referred to secular Ashkenazi Jews like Gabriel as an endangered species in Israel. And for my character, for what it's worth, has retired from the Israeli Secret Service and is living now as an art restorer in Venice.
Did you see the mini-series on Ripley, the Netflix mini-series?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
What did you think of it?
I enjoyed every minute of it. I have to say, I really loved it. I'm
Yeah.
crazy about the soundtrack, by the way.
I thought it was, yeah, but, and I don't want to turn this into a conversation about Ripley. It's a conversation about Alon. But the reason I brought up Ripley, of course, is because Ripley, like you and your work, very much reflects the art world. That miniseries really, I think, almost overdid the Caravaggio element, if you can overdo Caravaggio. What is it about art and murder that brings out the novelist in people like yourself and Highsmith?
For me, I mean, I love the using the art world as a stage for my stories, because it's a combination of beauty, of money, of greed, of avarice, of criminality, of fraud. It's just all there in the art world, and of course, anyone who's anyone, whether they are including criminals and oligarchs and you know, every rotten rich person in the world wants to have a flashy, showy art collection, and so the art world is just it sort of all flows together there, and it's a wonderful place for me to set my stories.
Have you later this week? I'm actually interviewing the English writer, or the Scottish. You wouldn't want to call it English. The Scottish writer Andrew O'Hagan, whose book Caledonian Road focuses, like yours, on self-portraits and its meaning. Have you seen this book? Have you read it?
I have not read it, but I know of it.
I think it's interesting in the way in which his book is very different from yours. It's a satire or an attack, I think, on contemporary Britain and corruption. But I think he, like you, would see the art world as a stage for criminality and corruption and rottenness, but also for beauty. Are you sometimes tempted in your work to make the novels a little bit more satirical, more Tom Wolfe-ish?
I think that if you would read, I could crack open certain passages in this novel, and I don't know if they're satirical, but I do write with, in many instances, with my tongue firmly planted in my cheek. And look, this novel was, to a very large extent,
This is the Death in Cornwall.
Yeah, inspired by just the utter train wreck, and the word that pops up all the time in the British press is the clown show that this once great political party, regardless of what your political leanings are. I mean, this is the oldest and most successful political party in the world. And it has just descended into.
And we're talking about the Conservatives, of course.
We are talking about the Conservative Party. I mean, in the autumn of 2022, we had 3 British prime ministers in a span of 7 or 8 weeks. I mean, just a period of unprecedented turmoil, and to the point where it was almost comedic in many respects.
Where it was more, I don't know what goes beyond comedy. It was absurdity.
Beyond comedy.
I mean, I guess going beyond comedy, Daniel, is farce.
And it became farce, and you know, Liz Truss in the head of lettuce, and I tried to actually capture a little bit of that in this in the final sequence of this novel, or I won't give too much away, but Gabriel plays a very determinative role in selecting the next British Prime Minister.
Are the Russians in it? I'm guessing they are. The Russians are everywhere.
There's a Russian reference.
Russian money, at least, and Russian rottenness.
There's a little bit of Russian money in it, and there is a contribution to the conservative coffers in the novel. I'm gonna watch my step here.
Yeah, I mean, we got to be careful. I don't want to undermine your sales.
And the no, in terms of giving too much away to the plot, but I will say that what the book deals with is how fine art can be used for purposes of money laundering, and the degree to which London, not to put too fine a point on it, has become the money laundering capital of the world. We now refer to it as the London laundromat. Hundreds of billions
we've
of
done
dollars.
whole shows on that, books
Yeah.
written by British journalists. It's interesting, much more so than the US, where the federal government's more aggressive. And again, in that sense, I think you'll enjoy Caledonian Road, which really addresses the way in which. What is it about art, beyond the fact that you can launder money and buy and sell fakes? What is it about art that attracts very wealthy people, Daniel?
First of all, it grants them entree into that world. So if you're throwing a lot of money around at art, this is a very flashy, exciting world to be in. I think people are attracted by the secrecy of the art world. There are many connections to be made in the art world, and of course, if you're someone without a lot of polish or grace and charm, I mean, the best way to get that patina of social acceptance, to move up a few rungs on the ladder, is to get yourself a flashy art collection. And it is the first thing that many people do when they become extraordinarily rich. They go out and they plunk down a couple $100 billion on a big art collection.
Yeah, and do they hang the art in their houses, or do they buy the galleries? I know the book begins in the Courthold Gallery, which I don't think the Russians own at the moment, or the Arabs.
No, not yet. No, they
one day perhaps.
Well, this book deals with the fact that that many super rich don't hang it at all. They buy it and they stash it in free ports around the world, and particularly in the Geneva free port. And this book details how free ports and offshore allow people to conceal vast amounts of money, to launder dirty money and to conceal tremendous amounts of wealth, and to avoid taxation. Art is a great way, if you handle it the right way and you store it the right way and buy and sell it the right way. It is a great tax dodge.
You're making it more and more attractive. This business.
There are some really
more and more sympathetic. The rich buy the art, they store it in Geneva. No one gets to see it, and they use it to launder their own criminal.
Well, how about
schemes.
this for you can buy $100 million. I'm pointing in the direction of Christie's auction house. You can buy $100 million or $200 million painting here in New York, and have it shipped to the Geneva Freeport and pay absolutely no taxes or duty on that piece of art. Now, if I go to around the corner to the Duane Reade drugstore and buy a can of shaving cream, I have to pay sales tax on that. But you can spend $100 million on a piece of art, ship it to the Geneva Freeport, sell it at a profit within the Geneva Freeport, or pay no capital gains on it. So there's art. It's not just in terms of its attractiveness as an investment, but art is because of the way that art is done in secret. We're talking about a $70 or $80 billion a year industry.
Yeah, and the Swiss, of course, always have a good nose for these kind of scams.
Of course they do, but most of, it's the opacity of the art world that makes it so perfect for money laundering. We were talking about $70 or $80 billion a year. Most of the sales are completely in secret. Buyers don't know sellers. Sellers don't know buyers. And the governments and tax collectors know virtually nothing at all about what's going on.
And the irony, of course, is that art is supposed to be the opposite of opaque.
Correct.
The great art, it reveals rather than hides. Caledonian Road ends with the image of Vermeer's Woman in Blue. I know that your collector also deals with Vermeer. Is there an irony there, or is it beyond irony that the contemporary art world is so opaque, and yet art itself is supposed to reveal. Although, of course, Vermeer's portrait of Blue is in its own way, asks more questions perhaps than it answers.
That's the magic of it. Look, I look. Art is always art ownership has been dominated by extremely wealthy people for centuries. It's commissioned by the wealthy. It was wealth has always played a great role in the art world. I just think that there's something just intrinsically wrong with using art purely for investment and locking it away and not looking at it. It just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, I don't think anyone.
See, that's my Gabriel Lawn right and wrong.
And I assume Gabriel would agree with that. We're speaking with Daniel Silva, one of the world's leading literary writers. Has a new book out. He has a book out every year. This one is A Death in Cornwall, another Gabriel Allon mystery, suspense about the art world. I want to remind everybody that great guests, famous guests like Daniel Silva, are brought to us because of our friends at Liberties, an excellent new quarterly on culture and politics. I think Daniel will enjoy this. All our guests get a subscription. Going to run a short feature on Liberties, and then we'll be back with Daniel to talk a little bit more about this new book, A Death in Cornwall. I don't want to give away all the secrets, but at the same time, perhaps we'll talk a little bit about A Death in Cornwall. Don't go away, anyone. We'll be back in a second.
The noise, there is nuance, insight. Liberties is not just a journal of ideas. It's a meteor of intelligent substance. It's the place to be for engaged citizens. Politics, opinion, substance. Liberties is a triumph for freedom of thought. A quarterly of urgency, of cultural exploration, of intellectual delight, of immaculate prose. It's invaluable. Subscribe now or find Liberties at your favorite bookseller.
And you can subscribe to Liberties at libertiesjournal.com. We're speaking with Daniel Silva, the author of a book every year, bestseller every year. This one is A Death in Cornwall. Daniel, let's talk about the art in this book. It's built around the self-portraits of a certain Vincent van Gogh. Tell us why you chose this.
Well, the Van Gogh, actually, Gabriel, it was stolen from the court hall in a previous book of mine. Gabriel played a minor role in its recovery, and he restored it for the court hall, and he attends a gallery reception at the beginning of the novel, and that's why he happens to be in London. He is asked by an officer, detective sergeant from the Devon and Cornwall Police, for help with an investigation with the murder, A Death in Cornwall. The victim of the murder is a art history professor from Oxford who specializes in provenance research. Gabriel follows up on something that she was working on. I won't go into too many details. And one thing leads to another, as it often is the case in the Gabriel Law novel, and he finds himself in the middle of a British political scandal. There is a painting that I deal with in this novel. It's a fictitious Picasso. And I use that fictitious Picasso, a surrealist portrait of a woman, to explore Nazi art looting in France during the Second World War, and how many of the paintings are still floating around on the market today. And so there's a painting at the center of it that's untitled Portrait of a Woman by Picasso. But yeah, I actually had that painting was stolen from the court hall in a book called The Rembrandt Affair many years ago, and Gabriel finally was able to get it back to the court hall.
Wow. So again, this comes back to
there they are.
The corruption. What about self-portraits, Daniel? What do they tell us? Why did an artist like Van Gogh, I called him Van Gogh, but of course it's Van Gogh. Why did he paint himself so many times? And how many times can you paint yourself?
I think that Van Gogh was probably fascinated with himself in a strange way.
Or
He
repulsed, or
also
perhaps a
also if it, it's
combination.
also when you don't have any money to pay a model. I mean, it comes
Yeah.
down to simple things like that. He worked on himself over and over again, and of course the self-portrait with bandaged ears was one of the most haunting and iconic self-portraits ever made. After he, had that terrible suicide attempt after his argument with Gauguin. And I think that the self-portraits are extraordinary of Van Gogh.
What do you think? And I don't want to keep on coming back to Caledonian Road, but in Caledonian Road, as you'll see, the central character in the book writes books about. He's not Alon. He's an art historian. He's the kind of guy who I guess would probably get murdered in one of your books. But he wrote a book about Vermeer, and he's in the process of writing a book about Rembrandt. And he suggests that these artists don't have selves at the heart of their identities, which is ironic if you're in the business of making self-portraits. Do you think self-portraits reveal or conceal the artist?
I think that probably depends on the mood that the artist is in. I think that there were times when Van Gogh was painting himself, for example, and he didn't care for what he was seeing. He was he's in a tremendous amount of pain at various points in his life. He was obviously hospitalized, but I think he was exploring this man and wondering who he was and what he was about. Look, I think that all artists, probably myself included, we like to I don't paint with a brush, but I try to paint with words. We project, as it were, and maybe we reveal little things about ourselves in every little character. I think that's true, whether the character's villainous or virtuous. We litter our little pieces of ourselves all through our work, and that's obviously true with the self-portrait.
It's interesting. I'm going to Mexico next week, and of course, Mexico City. And if one goes to Mexico City, you have to go to the Frida Kahlo Museum. Another master, if that's the right word, of self-portrait. Do you think men and women paint themselves differently? I mean, your characters, there are women in your books, but the central character tends to be a male, of course. Van Gogh and Picasso, notoriously, Rembrandt, Vermeer were all men. Do you think women do a different kind of job painting themselves?
I would know how to answer that. For better or worse, all of the artists that Gabriel specializes in old masters. He has done an Artemisia, one Artemisia, Gentilesi, but I think that she would probably be the only female artist that he's ever worked on. And I don't know how to answer that question. That is a very good question. I'll take a pass on that one, if that's okay.
What do you think of Frida Kahlo? Has she been in any of your books?
She has not. There she is. I have not. Gabriel has not worked on any of her stuff. So no, I haven't explored her work.
Your Honor, you're unusual, Daniel, in that you're like most authors. Most of the authors I talk to complain, "Oh, the publisher isn't sending me anywhere." You're about to embark on a long tour around the world. You're on schedule. What is it about your work that continues to be so successful? Is it that you've just got loyal followers? Donald Trump famously said that people would still vote for him if he assassinated someone in daylight on Fifth Avenue. Would your readers still read you if your work wasn't very good?
I don't know. I probably
you
not.
wouldn't try it. I
think
guess.
I know I have a pretty sophisticated readership. Yes, I write thrillers, but they are, they deal with the art world and art, and there's a lot of music in my thrillers, and musicians. So I write a sophisticated, I would say, type of thriller. I try to write an elegant, lyrical thriller, and I think I have a very sophisticated, educated audience. And I don't think that they would stick with me for long if I started churning out crud. And so I try not to churn out crud. I work very hard on my novels. And when I don't have the compulsion and the drive to try to make every sentence and every paragraph the best that it can be, I'll probably hang it up. But no, I wouldn't publish a book and that I wasn't extremely proud of, and I wouldn't write a book if I wasn't convinced that it was going to be. We have a saying: if it wasn't up to band standards, we borrow a line from what the Eagles used to say about their music. If it wasn't up to band standards, I wouldn't publish it or write it.
We wouldn't do it, Joe Biden, in other words.
Oh boy, poor Joe Biden. Poor Joe Biden.
I know you divide your time between DC and Florida. Your wife is a high-profile CNN correspondent, but you write most of your books alone, looking out on the sea in your Florida place. Yeah. Your books are very international. This one deals with Cornwall, Devon. There's some scenes in Corsica, London, of course. I'm sure Geneva pops up somewhere along the line. How do you do that, being stuck in one place in Florida?
I'm not stuck in one place. I travel a lot. And sometimes
you write mostly from one place. I mean, I'm sure you do some research.
I do. I travel for research and inspiration and relaxation. I try to sync up my vacation travel. It's not really vacation travel. It's more vacation/research travel.
Sometimes sure I travel to do your research in Cornwall or Corsica, isn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes I do it before I work on a book. Sometimes during. I've taken, numerous times. I've just taken a book and hopped on a plane and, finished a book in Morocco, for example, or Marseille. But yeah, travel is very important to me. And I tell you, the interruption that being locked down for COVID and being desk bound and locked in my office was no fun. I really missed.
What about museums? I know that O'Hagan's book Caledonian Road was inspired by a visit he made to the National Gallery in London. Do you get a lot of good ideas in museums? Do you wander around the great museums of the world? You're not stealing art, I hope.
No, but I do try to imagine what it would be like to steal a painting from a museum. No, but I've never stolen a painting. My children love to tell stories about how they have been dragged through every great museum in the world and dragged through every church in Venice and Rome to see great works of art. Yes, I spend a lot of time in museums.
If you could get away with stealing one work of art, what would it be?
I would never steal a work of art.
But if you could,
I have no desire to.
I mean, you'd put it on show. You wouldn't hide it away in Geneva, I would assume.
I have no desire. I don't own any art. I have no desire to. I don't have that drive that I must have a Pollock. I think that's a very
a Jackson Pollock, you mean?
Yeah, a unique compulsion that some people have, and I don't have it.
Finally, again on your X page, you note that you are. Married to Jamie Gangel, who's CNN special correspondent, friend like you of Gabrielle Elon. You note on your X page, you're always trying to impress Jamie Gangel. Has she read this book? Is she impressed? Is she your first reader?
She is she's been my editor from the beginning. So I have. Jamie edits my books, and a dear friend of mine named Louis Toscano, who was my editor 1,000 years ago when I was a young kid working for United Press International. I have these two people who have been with me from the beginning. They are the ones who helped me with the editing. Of course, I have my team at HarperCollins as well, but those are the two people that I rely on. A very small reading group, and we fight about every word and every comma. It's just the three of us.
Well, Daniel Silva, the author of A Death in Cornwall, can't keep on meeting like this every year or two. I hope you'll come back on the show. We know
I will definitely, if you'll have me. I really enjoy the time we spent together.
And of course, if one of the Van Gogh self-portraits disappears from one of the world's leading museums, I think Interpol will know where to look, Daniel.
Gabriel Long will help them find it, I'm sure.
Can I step on the